Welcome to Carstorian, the channel devoted to classic cars, concept cars, and other obscure cars from the past.
This one is the Futura. The roof is a clear plastic double bubble canopy hinged at the rear.
For decades after World War II, Americans loved styling their cars after their aircrafts. The Lincoln Futura was one of those cars. It had all sorts of futuristic innovations, but it also had a new styling cue, the Shark. The Lincoln Futura is such a great car to kick off the show with because it's a classic, it's a crazy car, and it's a concept car. It's also functional, and it was used a lot. There was only officially ever one made, and it ended up being, in my opinion, the greatest of all the Batman's toys.
Hey, it's the Batmobile. Just look.
I am looking.
Let's start with the designer of the Futura, Bill Schmidt. Schmidt started training at the Old Ford Trade School in 1940 and went to work in Ford's styling studio in 1942. He was the Lincoln Mercury Division's chief stylist from 1945 until 1955. In that time, Schmidt designed the 1952 Lincoln, the 1953 Lincoln XL 500 concept vehicle, and the 1956 Lincoln. The Futura was conceived in 1952 when Schmidt and a friend went scuba diving in the Bahamas. They were inspired by many forms of shimmering underwater sea life, but mostly by a manta ray and a mako shark. Schmidt's friend, Bill Mitchell, was the chief designer at Cadillac since 1936, and 2 years after this scuba diving trip, became General Motors' director of styling. The scuba diving trip in 1952 gave him the inspiration for the Corvette XP 755 Shark concept vehicle. That led to the 1963 Corvette Stingray. Back at Lincoln, Bill Schmidt teamed up with fellow designer John Najjar, engineering designer Martin Regato, design supervisor Roy Brown, clay model supervisor Ken Spencer, the interior designer Stan Thorwaldson, Ron Perry, who designed the plexiglass canopy, and Don De La Rosa. Don De La Rosa spoke Italian, which was important because he was to supervise the build done by the legendary coach builder Carrozzeria Ghia in Turin, Italy. Ghia made such cars as At its base, the Futura was a modified 1953 Lincoln chassis that was originally supposed to be used for the Mark II. The prototype chassis came with a 3-speed turbodrive automatic transmission, a 368 cubic inch 6-liter V8 with a 4-barrel carb, making 330 horsepower. It was all bought for $17,000. Schmidt, Najjar, and De La Rosa made sure Ghia didn't make too many changes to the design, as Ghia had a habit of doing. Only the wheel wells needed to be modified. Ghia also created the brand new color pearlescent frost blue white to help with Schmidt's Caribbean scuba diving inspiration. Ghia added to the paint ground down pulverized scales from thousands of fish to make the iridescent pearl white finish. The Futura was 18 feet 11 inches long, 7 feet wide, and 4 feet 5 inches tall at the top of the plexiglass canopy. The canopy top was very noisy, so they had a microphone styled outside of the car to let the driver know when other cars were honking their horns. It had scoops on top of the rear fenders, directing air to cool the brakes, and also to help with the air conditioning system. The air conditioning really didn't work, however, and because of the plexiglass canopy over the passengers, heat was a major problem. It had a safety setting that prevented the car from starting if the canopy or doors were not closed. It had chrome push-button operation for the transmission with 5 different color indicator lights to show what gear the car was in. Red for park, blue for reverse, white for neutral, green for drive, yellow for low. A clock was mounted in front of the passenger and aeroplane-style gauges for the cockpit. The speedometer was mounted at the center of the steering wheel, and the Futura even had a compass. Interior aluminum doors could be rolled away to hide other instruments and controls, giving the cockpit a cleaner, unadorned look. Between the seats were more controls and even a telephone between the seatbacks. It had 4-way power-adjustable bolstered bucket seats trimmed with blue, white, and black leather. The original budget for the project was $100,000, but the team had spent $80,000 on Ghia alone. By the time all was said and done, the Futura had cost $250,000 to create. That's $3 million in 2024 money. Ghia had constructed the Futura in only 3 months, and it arrived back in the United States just in time for the auto show circuit in January 1955. The Futura was such a big hit, it stayed on tour for 4 years, until 1958. Since the Futura was a fully operational car, Schmidt and the team met up with Benson Ford in New York City and took it for a drive. They went from the United Nations building through Central Park and stopped at the Tavern on the Green restaurant for a photo shoot. The AC vents failed during the drive, and even though it was still winter in New York, the sun through the plexiglass cockpit made things unbearable. By the end of its auto show touring career in 1958, other production cars had caught up with the Futura's styling cues. The Futura's headlights and tail fins were used on production Lincoln models from 56 to 57, and now Ford had the La Galaxy concept in 1958. The Futura was retired and moved to a Ford Motor Company storage facility. But that's not where the story ends, no pun intended. The Futura then had its cinematic debut in 1959.
I was just shifting gears, that's all.
It starred in the film It Started With a Kiss. The romantic comedy starred Glenn Ford, no relation, and Debbie Reynolds. I'm going to guess that the number one reason most people watch this now 65-year-old romantic comedy in 2024 is to see the Futura. The car doesn't disappoint, in bright red with red, white, and black leather interior. In my opinion, the Futura isn't shown enough in this movie, driving around New York and Spain. The Futura is itself a significant character, almost stealing the show. And in the film, it was considered a $40,000 car. That would make it a $431,000 car in 2024's money. After the film, famed custom car builder George Barris convinced Ford to sell him the Futura for $1 and other valuable consideration, meaning he was rumored to be working on other projects for them. The car sat behind Barris's shop for 5 years, gathering dust and rusting away, with the Mercury D528 concept car. In 1965, the automobile customizer Barris was approached by the producer of the Batman TV series, William Dozier. Dozier was looking for a new Batmobile. The current Batmobile at the time was a custom 1956 Oldsmobile that was built in 1963 by a 23-year-old Batman enthusiast, Forrest Robinson. The old Batmobile was already starting to look very dated. The producer wanted to use a '59 Cadillac, but that wasn't fast enough. The Futura was the perfect fit. Barris restored the Futura into the Batmobile in only 3 weeks. He used the 1966 Ford Galaxy frame and engine. Barris insured the Futura Batmobile for $125,000, and he only leased it to ABC so it could remain the centerpiece of his collection. The Futura Batmobile made its television debut on January 12, 1966 in the episode Hi Diddle Diddle, and remained on the series until 1968. The then Batman Adam West highly disapproved of the U-shaped steering wheel originally created, so it was replaced with an Edsel steering wheel. Once again, the Futura was the star of the show, almost as big as the star Batman himself. Barris ended up making 5 fiberglass Futura replicas for some wealthy car enthusiast who desperately wanted one. But the original he kept for himself until he was 87 years old. Finally, in 2013, Barris auctioned off the Batmobile Futura at a Barrett-Jackson auction event. The final bid went to Rick Champagne, a wealthy industrialist from Arizona, for a then record-breaking $4.62 million. I worked with exotic cars around similar price points, Paganis and Bugattis mostly. I'd much rather have cast a bid for $4.7 million, then buy just another Huayra, Veyron, or Chiron. Those cars will always be available. But the one and only real Futura will only be more and more special as time goes by. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, and leave a comment below for future classic, weird, or concept cars you are interested in seeing.